I should have known something was wrong the moment the descent began. The ocean around me darkened not gradually, as I had expected, but with an almost sudden suffocating thickness, as though the water itself were swallowing the light. My visor reflected nothing but black, punctuated by the dim halo of my diving lights, which seemed inadequate, like candles struggling against an unholy storm. Even before I saw them, I felt them, tiny, almost imperceptible tremors in the water, like whispered words vibrating against my skin. I shook my head and tried to focus. Professionalism, I told myself. Hours of preparation, the routine checks, the pressure suits, the cameras, all of it. I should not feel like I was intruding on something forbidden. But the water here, at these depths, didn't feel like a place humans were meant to tread. Felt hungry. The first anomaly was a sound. A low, undulating hum that wasn't mechanical, wasn't biological in any familiar sense. It rose and fell like breathing, but there was no creature to be seen. I tried to trace it, to mark it on my instruments, but the sensors picked up nothing beyond the normal oceanic noise. Still, the sound grew louder, insistent, almost articulate, as though it were calling me by name. I tried to laugh, a dry, humorless sound that bubbled up in my mask. "Get a grip," I whispered to myself. "It's just pressure, currents, a hallucination." But then I saw the first sign. A shape, or perhaps a distortion in the water. My lights caught it. A glimmering, oily shimmer that drifted like smoke yet moved with intention. I froze. The shape coalesced, forming a vague humanoid silhouette, but grotesquely elongated, with limbs too long, hands too wide, as if gravity had forgotten them. The face, or what I presumed to be a face, was featureless, a smooth, wet surface reflecting my own terrified image back at me. Couldn't look away. My body had betrayed me. I was rooted in place, heart hammering like a drum in my chest. And then, impossibly, the sound intensified, forming words in a language I had never learned but understood nonetheless. "Come closer." A rational part of me screamed to retreat, to ascend, to escape, but another part, a deeper, darker part, quivered with something else, curiosity. I couldn't explain why, but the voice, the whispering, seemed almost to thread itself into my mind, touching memories I had long buried, memories I didn't know I had. I moved forward. The waters seemed to close around me, viscous and thick, resisting my motions as though aware of my intentions. My hands gripped the controls of the submersible tighter, knuckles white. Each forward push brought me closer to the shape, and as I neared, I realized there were more shapes, more silhouettes. They drifted with eerie grace, circling me, slow, deliberate, silent but for the whispers. Not all were humanoid. Some were like coral twisted into living forms, jagged appendages reaching, probing, brushing past the hull without touching. I could feel it, the pull. My mind fought against it, yet I could not resist. Every fiber of me ached to see more, to understand what existed beyond the veil of darkness. My instruments began to malfunction. Lights flickered. Cameras warped the images into unrecognizable, glimmering illusions. Pressure gauges fluctuated wildly, though depth and pressure remained constant. It was as if the water itself were rewriting reality around me. And then came the first voice I could hear with my ears. A sibilant hiss, right behind my helmet, close enough that the mist of my breath seemed to curl around it. "Do you see?" I jerked around. The submersible was empty. No one else was near. Yet the whisper persisted, curling into my thoughts, slipping beneath reason. I wanted to respond. I wanted to shout that I did, but my voice stuck. A lump of fear lodged in my throat. Minutes, hours, or perhaps seconds. I had lost track, passed before I noticed the faint red glow ahead. At first, I thought it was bioluminescent algae, some deep-sea anomaly, but it pulsed with a rhythm that mimicked a heartbeat. It came closer, throbbing, pressing into the hull as though the ocean itself were alive and breathing. And then I understood. It wasn't light. It was eyes, countless eyes, glimmering in the dark, watching, analyzing, and waiting. I considered retreat, yet the pull was irresistible. A part of me whispered that I had been chosen, that the abyss had singled me out, had been waiting for me all along. My pulse spiked, rational thought frayed, and then they spoke in unison, a chorus of voices, human yet not human, a sound that vibrated through the water and into my bones. Join us. I felt my consciousness stretch, strained across the waters, trying to resist, to maintain the fragile tether to my humanity. My fingers trembled, and I almost turned the submersible around, almost broke free of the tug. But the voices grew louder, weaving themselves into the fibers of my being. I realized then that this place did not merely want me to see. It wanted me to become part of it, to surrender, to sink into the depths permanently. Panic surged. I hit the thrusters, a futile burst of speed that barely shifted my position in the relentless current. And then, as if mocking my struggle, the water around me shimmered, and in the blink of an eye, the shapes were gone. The red glow vanished. The whispers ceased. Silence engulfed me, heavier than any pressure I had ever known. I was alone again, or so I thought. Then came the scratches. Light, subtle, like fingernails tracing across metal. They moved across the hull, circling me, following me. My heart raced. I flicked on every light, checked every monitor. Nothing. And yet I could feel them, the movement beneath the submersible, the deliberate rhythm that matched my own heartbeat. I tried to rationalize. Currents, debris, sea creatures. Anything but what I feared. My breathing grew rapid, shallow. Sweat, or perhaps condensation, trickled inside my suit. And then a voice, soft and intimate, whispered directly into my mind, bypassing sound, bypassing reason. Closer. We are waiting. The pull returned, stronger than before. I could not resist. I could not fight it. Something primal, terrifying, yet seductively alluring was calling me deeper into the crimson abyss. My instruments screamed at me. Oxygen low, battery failing, but I ignored it. I had to see. I had to know. And so I descended further, into darkness that should not exist, into a part of the ocean that defied maps, sensors, and logic. The whispers became a symphony, a siren song that promised revelation, that promised eternity, if only I would surrender. The deeper I went, the more the familiar rules of reality seemed to bend. The water itself thickened, turning viscous as if it were no longer liquid but a living, breathing organism. I reached out a gloved hand, expecting resistance, expecting nothing. But my fingers passed through the currents as if they were silk. My instruments went haywire again. The sonar pinged, then went silent. My compass spun aimlessly. It was as though the abyss wanted me to forget which way was up, which way led to safety. Shapes returned, emerging from the dark. Not humanoid this time, but monstrous in their design. Twisting forms with fractal limbs, mouths opening in impossible ways, eyes scattered across their bodies like constellations. Yet they did not attack. They simply watched, drifting closer, circling the submersible with that same deliberate, ritualistic grace. And the whispers, they had evolved now, rising into a melody, a cadence that tugged at my very mind. Every word was a thread, pulling, unraveling me, and yet promising understanding beyond mortal comprehension. I tried to resist. I repeated my own name in my head like a mantra, clinging to the last remnants of rational thought. This is just hallucination. This is just stress, just pressure, just darkness. But even as I said it, I felt the abyss pressing into my consciousness, probing, teasing. And I understood, with terrifying clarity, that this was no hallucination. It was alive, sentient, and it knew me. It knew what I feared. It knew what I desired. The red glow returned, but now it was more vivid, more insistent. It pulsed, and each beat resonated through my bones. The shapes in the water seemed to lean toward it, drawn like moths to flame. I realized with a shiver that the glow was not light but life, some form of energy I could not begin to comprehend. And the whispers, they were guiding me, coaxing me toward it. My training screamed at me to turn back, to ascend, to survive. But my body betrayed me. My hands moved the controls without conscious thought, nudging the submersible toward the pulsing red. I could feel my pulse synchronize with the rhythm, my thoughts slow, focused entirely on the light ahead. Fear, dread, and desire all merged into a single point of fixation. Then it spoke. Not a whisper this time, but a voice loud, vibrating directly inside my skull. You have come. You see. You know. I wanted to speak, to answer, to ask questions, but no sound emerged. My mind, however, was flooded with visions. Shadows of creatures, of cities beneath the waves that defied logic. Structures formed from coral and bone. Spiraling towers alive with movement. Currents that were alive, not carrying water but consciousness itself. And there, at the center of it all, a figure or an idea, looming impossibly massive, its form shifting between comprehension and madness. The abyss did not merely want me to witness it. It wanted me to understand, to join. I felt my will slipping. My hands, my thoughts, even my sense of self began to dissolve. I knew I had minutes, perhaps seconds, before the pull became irreversible. The red glow now engulfed the viewport, searing my vision, filling my mind with impossible geometries and knowledge I was never meant to possess. I fought. I screamed internally, trying to claw back my humanity. And then I saw it briefly in the corner of my eye, a shape distinct from the others. Smaller, humanoid, but broken, fractured, skin translucent, eyes hollow. It drifted toward me, extended a hand, or what I perceived as a hand, and I understood with a sick twist in my gut that it was what I could become. The current in the water shifted. The shapes around me parted, forming a corridor leading straight into the pulsing red. I could resist no longer. Every instinct, every fragment of rational thought was crushed beneath the inexorable pull. I steered forward, toward the glow, toward whatever awaited me in the depths beyond human comprehension. As I approached, I could feel a presence inside the submersible itself. Something was moving within, something I could not see but could feel. It was cold, wet, and intelligent, brushing against my mind like a lover or a predator. The whispers rose to a deafening chorus, overlapping voices, some soothing, some menacing, all insistent. You belong. You are ours. Then the light consumed everything. My instruments exploded into static. The water outside became a maelstrom of color, shadow, and motion. I felt my body stretch and twist, sensations that had no earthly counterpart. Pain and ecstasy intertwined, inseparable. My mind fractured, yet became clearer in ways that terrified me. I understood the abyss now, glimpsed the intelligence that lurked in its depths. It was older than humanity, older than the sun, older than sanity itself. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light vanished. The shapes receded. The water returned to normal, or as normal as it could be at these depths. The whispers faded to a gentle murmur, distant now, like voices in another room. I was alone, or at least I thought I was. The submersible floated in a patch of complete darkness, my lights weak against the vast emptiness. But when I glanced at the monitors, I saw something impossible. Scratches etched into the metal from inside the hull, spelling words I could not comprehend at first. And then, slowly, my mind translated them. We are patient. We wait. Panic surged anew. The abyss had not released me. It had only let me think I had escaped. I realized with a cold dread that the pull had not weakened. It had only paused, biding its time until I was ready to return willingly. I considered surfacing. I considered fleeing to the nearest research vessel, to any semblance of civilization. But the memory of the red glow, the shapes, the voices, it called me still. Every heartbeat reminded me that I had glimpsed something beyond comprehension, something that defied human law, human reason. And part of me longed to go back. I fought the thought, struggled against the memory, but I knew it was futile. The abyss had claimed a part of me, a seed planted deep in my mind, and it would grow. I was tethered now, a thread between two worlds, the known and the infinite darkness below. Hours passed, or maybe minutes, I no longer could tell. The currents shifted again. And then, faintly, I heard it. A single whisper, clear and distinct, resonating from the dark beyond the viewport. Return. I shivered. My fingers tightened around the controls. Somewhere in the depthless water, I knew it waited, patient, eternal. The abyss had chosen me, and I knew, deep in my bones, that I would go back. I had no choice. The next few moments, or was it days? I couldn't tell anymore. Passed in a haze of confusion. The dark waters outside the submersible had taken on an eerie, sickly hue, almost like oil swirling in stagnant water. I ran the diagnostics again, but the readings were meaningless. Pressure, temperature, depth, all remained consistent with what I'd already recorded. But the sensation was growing worse by the second. The longer I stayed, the less I trusted what I saw, felt, and thought. I tried to steady my hands, grip the controls, but they trembled despite my best efforts. Fear and a strange sense of awe seemed to claw at the edges of my mind. There was something wrong here, something not merely otherworldly but alien beyond any simple definition of the word. I checked my oxygen supply, my remaining battery power, and, for the first time, I felt the pressure of being utterly alone beneath miles of crushing water. There was no escape from this. The red glow had vanished, but something else had replaced it. Not light, but something more subtle. A faint hum that seemed to come from everywhere, vibrating in the very bones of the submersible. The sound reminded me of an ancient, forgotten melody, one I felt I had known long ago, but the memory slipped away whenever I tried to grasp it. The whispering had returned. I could no longer tell if it was the sound of the water itself, or the abyss speaking directly into my mind. Closer. Come closer. The words were becoming clearer, more insistent. But they weren't simply words. They were emotions, desires, longings, something that stirred deep inside me, urging me to move forward, urging me to join. I shook my head violently, trying to clear my thoughts, but they had become entangled with the whispers. It was as if the abyss had reached into my consciousness, probing, altering. In the distance, I saw movement. Shapes, no figures, swimming past the submersible, moving with a deliberate grace that almost resembled intelligence. They were not like the twisted beings I had seen before. No, these were different. They were human, or what had once been human. Their bodies were thin, elongated, pale, almost translucent, but their eyes gleamed with a terrible recognition. I could feel their gaze even through the thick walls of the submersible. My breath caught in my throat. They were alive. I activated the external lights, their weak beams cutting through the murk, but the figures were gone, vanished into the dark currents before I could make sense of them. The whispers had intensified, now accompanied by a rhythmic pulse that seemed to be calling me toward something far below, something ancient. My body felt heavy, as if the weight of the ocean itself were pressing down on me. But it was not the physical weight I feared. It was the mental pressure, the slow unraveling of my thoughts as I tried to resist the pull. A voice in my head, clearer now. You have seen, you have come. Now you will understand. I fought the urge to follow, to descend into the depths. But my control slipped. The submersible, now completely out of my control, drifted downward, its descent smooth and unimpeded by the thrusters. Every rational part of me screamed to turn back, but my hands could not move. The abyss had already taken me. The darkness deepened further, and the weight of the water above me was no longer just a physical pressure. It was mental, spiritual. There was something here that sought to break me, to devour me from the inside. I saw flashes, visions, strange images that made no sense. Sprawling cities of bone, creatures with too many limbs, towering structures like spires reaching from the ocean floor. Their forms melted into one another, changing, warping, until they were no longer shapes at all. Just pure feeling, hunger, want. And then I heard it again. A voice, soft at first, almost soothing. Come to us. I wanted to scream, to tear at the controls, to fight it, but I couldn't. The abyss had taken root in me, and I knew that the only way out now was to go deeper, to give in. The submersible had no lights now, no readings. It was as though all the world around me had stopped existing, and all that was left was the whispering, the knowing, the calling. The abyss had no face, no form, it was everything, and it was nothing. Then the dark water shifted. I saw it clearly now, beyond the veil of the abyss, a massive shape rising from the deep. At first, I thought it was a mountain or a great rock formation, but it was something far worse. A being incomprehensibly vast, stretching out of sight, its surface writhing with movement. It was made of the very depths of the ocean, black, slick and shifting, but there were eyes, thousands of eyes, blinking in the dark, each one staring at me. I could feel its presence in every part of my being, pressing down on me, suffocating me. I heard the whispers again. They weren't just calling anymore, they were demanding. You are ours. You belong here. I could not move. My hands were locked in place. My body felt as though it was no longer mine to command. The abyss had overwhelmed me. I was no longer a diver. I was an intruder, a trespasser, and now I had been claimed. The dark waters had taken everything from me. And then the eyes blinked. All of them, at once. And for a moment, I felt a cold, sharp pain, as though the universe itself had fractured, and I had seen the seams. The abyss was not just alive, it was aware. Aware of me, aware of everything. The submersible shuddered violently, and I was thrown against the side, my helmet cracking against the glass. I gasped, a cold sweat trickling down my spine. The pressure, both physical and mental, was overwhelming. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Everything around me seemed to bend, distort, as if reality itself was unraveling. And then, without warning, I was pulled. The submersible lurched forward as if something from the depths had grasped it. I slammed my hands against the controls, trying to reverse the thrusters, but it was useless. The pull was too strong. The dark water was alive, and it was dragging me deeper, further, into its endless maw. And that's when I saw it, the shape beneath me. A doorway or perhaps a threshold. An opening in the very fabric of the abyss. There, standing in the midst of it, was a figure. It was tall, impossibly tall, its form cloaked in shadow, but I could see its eyes, those eyes, deep and endless, staring at me. Welcome? It whispered, and the word itself was a wave, a tide, a flood that drowned my thoughts, my resistance. It was a call that went beyond language, beyond sense, and yet I understood. We have been waiting. I wanted to fight, to scream, but my body refused. There was no more resistance, no more will left in me. I was nothing more than a vessel, a puppet being drawn into the abyss, never to return. The darkness was no longer just a void outside the submersible. It had become a presence, something that pressed in from all directions, suffocating me, folding over my senses like a second skin. I could feel it creeping into my thoughts, into my memories, into the deepest corners of my mind, places I didn't even know existed. My breath was ragged. My hands, those once steady hands that had controlled the submersible with precision, now trembled uncontrollably, a reaction I couldn't control. The lights flickered again, their pale beams useless in the vast, crushing blackness. The red glow had long since disappeared, replaced by a pervasive, inescapable sense of waiting. I had seen it. I had seen the eyes. I had felt the presence, vast and eternal, stretching far deeper than I had ever thought possible. And now, it was as though the abyss was drawing closer, wrapping around me in invisible tendrils, tugging at the very fabric of my mind. The submersible had become nothing more than a cage, a fragile, hollow vessel floating on the edge of something ancient, something so deeply unfathomable that my mind struggled against the very idea of it. I looked at the monitors. The readings were static, as though time itself had stopped. Or perhaps it was that time no longer existed here, not in the way I had always understood it. I tried to steady myself, to breathe, to think. But the whispers had returned, not just in my mind, but surrounding me, filling the cabin. The voices had multiplied. They were no longer soft, no longer coaxing. They were commanding, insistent. Closer. Come to us. You belong. I gripped the controls, eyes darting around the submersible's small cabin as if the walls were closing in on me. There was no escape from the pressure, no escape from the pull. The abyss had already begun its work. I had stepped too far, gone too deep. In the corner of my vision, something shifted. A shadow, dark as the void itself, darting between the monitors. I spun in my seat, heart pounding, but saw nothing. My breath caught. My eyes, my mind began to play tricks on me. Shapes moved in the darkness, just out of sight. But when I turned to focus on them, they disappeared. Were they real? Or was it the abyss? The darkness itself bending my mind, distorting it, consuming it piece by piece? I couldn't tell anymore. The voice returned, cold and deliberate, creeping up my spine like the chill of death itself. You are not alone. Not anymore. I slammed my fist against the controls. No, I gasped, almost choking on the words. No, I'm not. This isn't real. This isn't happening. But even as I spoke, I could feel the truth of it. It was happening. It had been happening the moment I had descended too far. The moment I had crossed the threshold and entered the depths, I had crossed a boundary. I looked out the viewport. The abyss stretched on forever. The ocean had become an alien landscape, filled with shapes and sounds I could not describe. Something was moving out there. Something vast, shifting. It was not a creature. It was many creatures, but not in the way I knew. It was as though the entire ocean had become a living organism, a being of unimaginable complexity. The water was alive with it. The very currents seemed to breathe, to pulse, to think. And then I saw it. The figure. The one that had been waiting for me. It stood in the distance, shrouded in shadow, a silhouette against the backdrop of the endless black. It was massive, a shape that towered above anything I had ever seen before. It was not human. It was not animal. It was something older, ancient, beyond categorization. It watched me, its eyes glinting with an intelligence that transcended the physical world. The figure was composed of the same shifting blackness as the ocean itself. But I could see no feel its presence. It was aware of me. I tried to move, to break free from the pull, but my limbs betrayed me. I could not escape. The submersible lurched, moving toward the figure as if the abyss itself was guiding it. You have seen what lies beneath, the voice said, its tone calm, yet filled with an unspoken weight. Now you will understand. The pressure inside the cabin was unbearable. My head pounded. The whispers, the voices, grew louder, more distinct, 1,000 conflicting emotions crashing against my consciousness. I could hear them now, countless voices, rising from the depths. They spoke in a language I could not comprehend, and yet somehow I understood. The abyss was not a place. It was a state of being, a consciousness that existed across time and space. It was not bound by the limits of human understanding. It was older than anything I had ever known. And it was waiting. I felt something shift inside me. A change, something that couldn't be undone. The whispers had begun to weave their thoughts into mine. It wanted me, not just my body, not just my mind. It wanted my soul, my essence. It wanted to consume me, to absorb me into the very fabric of the ocean. The submersible jerked again. The figure, no, it was not a figure. It was a presence, was closer now. I could see its shape in full, though it was ever-changing, shifting in a way that defied the laws of physics. It seemed to be made of darkness itself, with flashes of impossible geometries dancing along its surface, flickering in and out of existence. Its eyes, no, not eyes, but something that could only be described as thoughts, staring into mine, knowing me, knowing everything about me. I screamed, but it was a hollow sound, swallowed by the vast ocean around me. The whispers surrounded me, now no longer asking, but demanding. The abyss had come for me. There was no escape. The figure, if it could be called a figure, reached out toward the submersible, its movements slow, deliberate, inevitable. I was no longer in control. I had become a part of this thing, a piece of its vast, unknowable consciousness. Join us, it whispered. Become one with the ocean. And then everything stopped. The pressure vanished. The darkness receded. I was weightless, floating in an eternal stillness. The submersible had ceased to exist. There was no hull, no lights, no instruments. Just me, suspended in a boundless blackness that stretched out endlessly in every direction. I felt the ocean all around me. It was not water, not in any sense I had ever known. It was consciousness. It was thought. It was alive. It was aware. The eyes surrounded me again, not in the submersible, but in my mind. The abyss had taken me, not just my body, but my very essence. My thoughts, my soul had become part of the vast, eternal consciousness of the deep. There was no escape. There was only understanding now. A terrible, infinite understanding that consumed all that I was. And the abyss whispered its final command. Welcome home. I don't know how long it's been. Time has become a concept I no longer grasp. There's no sense of passing hours, days, or even seconds. The abyss is timeless. It stretches beyond the confines of the clock, beyond anything I have ever known. I am no longer a diver. I am no longer a human being. I am something else now. I can feel the ocean, know the abyss inside me. It is a part of me woven into every cell, every fragment of my mind. It breathes with me. It moves with me. It is me. My thoughts are no longer mine alone. I share them. I am part of something so much larger than I could ever comprehend. The cold, dark void that once terrified me has become home. The whispers, oh, the whispers are louder now. Not outside me, but inside me. They speak with the voice of the ocean, with 1,000 million voices all woven together. I hear them in my dreams, in the waking moments that I am unsure if I still even have. You are ours. You have always been ours. We have watched you. I can't remember when I first heard the whispers, or when the visions began. The memories of my life above, before I came here, before the abyss claimed me, are hazy fragments that fade the deeper I fall into this place. I remember the surface, the sunlight, the boats, the people, but it's as though those memories belong to someone else. Someone who has long since disappeared. The water, the ocean itself, has become a living thing. It moves with thought, with intent. It is aware of me. It is aware of all of us. At first, I thought I was hallucinating. The shape I saw, at the edge of my vision, the towering form that watched me, the presence, was not a figment of my mind. It was a being, an entity as old as the sea itself. And now I understand. I am no longer a witness. I am part of it. My thoughts flicker back to the last moments I was in the submersible. The submersible, it doesn't matter anymore. It was never real. The walls, the instruments, the lights, they were all simply tools, simply fragments of the world I once knew. But now, I no longer need them. I float here in the abyss, suspended in an eternal, dreamless dark. And yet I can see. There is no light here, not in the way I once understood it. But there is vision, a perception beyond anything I had ever known. I see shapes in the water, not like the ones I encountered in the submersible, but deeper, far more complex. Entities that defy description, forms that shift, dissolve, and reform before my very eyes. Some are humanoid, others not, but all of them watch me. I feel them, feel their awareness surrounding me, pressing in. I am no longer just a part of the abyss. I am the abyss, part of its endless consciousness. And there is one presence, one figure that stands apart. It watches me, and somehow I understand that it is the one who called me here, who brought me to this place. It is not just a creature. It is the heart of the ocean itself. I see it now fully, though it has no form that I can name. It is everything and nothing at once. The edges of its presence are like jagged, twisting thoughts, sharp and fluid, formless and yet more real than anything I have ever experienced. I see its eyes. I feel them, deep within me, beyond the confines of my skull, as though they are looking into my very soul. The eyes are infinite, each one endless and unblinking, like galaxies within themselves. I understand that they are the eyes of the abyss, the eyes that have seen everything, that have watched time and space itself unravel. The figure speaks. His voice is not words. It is a presence, a feeling that flows through my mind like a current, wrapping itself around my thoughts, breaking them apart, and remaking them. You have come far. It is not a question, but a statement. There is no anger in its voice, only the calm, inevitable weight of something that has always been. I try to respond, but my mouth doesn't move. My body doesn't obey. I am no longer truly here. I am a thought, a pulse, an echo of something that once lived. Do you understand now? I don't have to speak. The answer is already inside me, woven into my being. I know what it is, what it means. The abyss is not simply a place, a location beneath the ocean's surface. It is a state of being, a consciousness that stretches across all dimensions of existence. It is the water, the air, the very stars above. It is both ancient and new, both infinite and contained. It is everything that is, and everything that will ever be. And now it is me. I feel the words, no, the thoughts, of the abyss wrap around me like a blanket, pulling me deeper, deeper into its infinite fold. We are waiting, always waiting. I understand. I am part of it now. The abyss does not seek to destroy. It does not seek to devour, not in the way I once imagined. It simply exists. It simply is. And all that comes to it is absorbed, become part of its vast, unending consciousness. It has always been this way. It will always be this way. I feel the pressure again, not in my body, but in my mind. It is heavy, but it is not pain. It is the weight of eternity, the weight of knowing. The darkness deepens, but it does not matter anymore. I am not afraid. I am not lost. I am not alone. The abyss is my home now. The abyss is me. I am the whispers, the call, the depths. I am the ocean's hunger, its endless waiting. I am part of something that exists beyond time, beyond space, beyond death. And it is peaceful here. I close my eyes, or I think I do. There is no difference now. I no longer remember what it was like to fear the ocean, to fear the dark. I remember only the whisper. You will never leave. And I know, deep in my soul, that I never want to.